Good morning. It's nice to hear that hum again. All the good talks that are now starting. Okay, so welcome to 98 delegates. A very wide geographical spread this year. I'm glad to see we got a couple of people from down under, South Africa. Actually, we got one more. Adrian Smith will be coming Wednesday, I think, and he's starting to tell us about another application from the Southern Hemisphere that he's been doing with John Miller, so he might steal a bit of Liam's time on Thursday. You'd think that United Kingdom has now become a huge market for dialogue, but that's not exactly so. It's because there's a lot of dialoguers here this year. We got someone from the Far East, and we'll get back to that on Wednesday. Under the United States, we have the person who came the furthest, and that's Jerry Brennan, who's here to talk about his efforts in educating kids with APL. But welcome to you all. I'm glad to see that we are covering the earth with APL and are having representatives from all over here today. So for some time, a lot of people have been asking about what are these symbols that we have one each year for each conference. And in particular, Stefano Lanzavecchia has been asking a number of times, but he keeps not coming. So I'm going to tell you about them today, and I hope that there's enough Italian here that they can take the story back to Stefano. Okay, so the snakes that we've had for 7 years now, there's a hole in the row at Berlin in 2010. We were not the master of that logo. But these have all been snakes. And the snakes, or worms, as they say in the United States, have a big role in the northern mythology. First of all, they circumvent the flat earth. So there's a snake that's actually biting its tail and circumvents all the known world. But also, it guards the port or the gate to the underworld and guards all the valuables that's there, in particular the gold. The molding of the snake, all reptiles are shedding their skin and acquiring a new one as they grow. That's a symbol in the mythology of immortality. And worn as an amulet, the snake brings power and strength. And some of the snakes, in particular the little mischievous one from 2008, are depicting the god Odin, who was a bit sort of false in his ways. He liked to cheat people into doing what he liked. But worn as an amulet, it brings you skills, craftsmanship, and visionary ideas. So, I think it's very reflective of APL and how we use it, and used as the symbols or as the amulets, which you are actually doing when you wear your bags and your polo shirts or vests. It's only good things that comes from that. So that's what we want for you. Now, there's only so many pieces of jewelry found with snakes, so at some point we have to change, and we thought after 7 years it's a good point to change. So we've started to use ships this year as the first year. And when you've had a bunch of ships on your mugs, we might find something else, but we'll decide by then. Now, the ship was very important to the Vikings because they used it to travel the world and exchange ideas. The traveling and exchange of ideas and tradesmanship is it's a good symbol for an APL conference, I think. But there's a story about this ship because the ship that they use on their jewelry is the one that's called Fridlatner. And the ship was built by 3 dwarfs. And the story is like this, that Loke is the god of the that was always up to mischief. And one night he sneaked in and cut the hair off Sif, who was Thor's wife. And Thor is the thunder god and one of the top dogs in the world of the gods. And he got very upset, obviously, because he had a very long, blonde, beautiful hair, and threatened Loke, so he had to replace the hair somehow. So Loke looked out the dwarves, and we know that the dwarves are very good craftsmen with metals. So what they did is they smithed a new wig for Sif made out of gold. And when Sif wore the wig, it immediately attached to her head and replaced her and restored her to her previous looks, and even better, because it was purely golden now. But the dwarves can't do just one thing, they have to do more. So in addition, they also smithed the spear, Glugner, which was given to Odin, and this spear actually always hit what it was aimed at. And Odin had the idea that he should sometimes mix in human affairs. So he would, if he threw that spear over a human army, that army was doomed. It would lose the battle, and all the soldiers were marked for death. And he sometimes did that because he liked good warriors in Asgard. So he had some entertainment, and in Asgard they would fight all day, and then they would all die, and then they would wake up and go on again the next morning. Okay, but and then last, the ship. That was really special because when it was not used, it was just kept in a belt pocket and weighed less than a handkerchief. But if you wanted to use it, it just grew to exactly the size you needed. And it had the great fortune that every time you were sailing it, the wind was blowing directly into the sail, so you could go wherever you wanted. So I think that's also a very good symbol of APL. That is very small, but it can become as big as you want and take you in the direction you want. So here's the story about the symbols, and I'll be quiet about that for another 6 years, and we'll see what happens. And remember to bring that back to Stefano. Okay. So the conference this year has a little bit of changed format. It's 1 day longer. We've gotten rid of all the parallel sessions, almost. There was a little bit too much stuff that we had to talk about that we could completely get rid of it. But this is based on the questionnaires that you've handed in to us in previous years. So if you don't like this format, please tell us. Give us the feedback and take the chance to fill out the feedback forms and hand it in to us before the conference ends. Because we try to make it as good as possible for all of you. There's no changes to the schedule this year. Everybody has arrived. Well, actually, as I said, Hayden has also very lately announced his arrival and is dying to talk about something. So we'll find a spot where he can talk about that application. Additions to the team this year, I'm happy to say that Pat has joined us as manager of sales and marketing in the United States, something we've been wanting to improve for a long time. And she's been working hard to get to know Dyalog and our products. And she will be probably talking to many of you to get good ideas for war stories to tell prospects in the United States. So please talk to Pat and give her insights in why you're using Dyalog and why it's such a good idea. There's another long-term project. Some of you might have noticed that Jay is not here this year. It's because he's otherwise occupied. This is his son that was born in September, Dylan, and he didn't think he could leave wife and kid to come here so early. It's actually a very beautiful child. I seldom see babies that are beautiful from day one, but this one is. So, yes, keep your daughters home in about 18 years from now. Or maybe bring them. Right. So business-wise, it's been an interesting year. Some of you might recall that last year at Boston, we got hammered for bad looks. I don't know if you remember Anna coming out with all guns blazing, telling us about how she wanted Dyalog applications to look and showing us iPad applications with a very slick interface. And I mean, she got a point. So part of the what we did after that conference was starting a process, talking to the customers, and see what we could do about providing better GUI. And part of the results will be available with 13.2. It's an improved version of the old GUI that we have in Dyalog APL. And hopefully more will come later. At least Morten will talk to you about our new GUI strategy in just a little while. We've also continued research that we spoke about, or have actually spoken about for a couple of years, research into how to best turn APL into a parallel computing language. And we worked with a number of academic partners in that respect. And we hope that the result will start to materialize in the product sooner rather than later, but it's a major surgery to the APL, so maybe it's going to be a little bit later than sooner. Also with 13.2 you'll get a very elegant array editor. Well, it's only if you have Windows and Unicode, but I think most people are there now. For Unix it's a different thing. We can't do these very nice GUIs. The author is David Liptak, who's started his own company. He was previously with the APL2 development team at IBM, but he's now developing tools for the APL community. And we were lucky to see an early demo of the product and immediately fell in love with it, and have later been very happy to be able to license it with Dyalog APL. Dyalog has always had the policy that we don't sell the product in little pieces. So when you get Dyalog APL, you get everything you need, or everything at least we provide at the current point in time in terms of tools to make professional applications. And the examples are we purchased the Causeway products, and it came bundled with Dyalog. We have Conga and SQAPL products that were done by Insight Systems, which are basically Bjørn and Morten and I, and Helene. There's the MyServer and Source that has been developed during the later years, and all of this just comes with Dyalog as a tool set. But this year, we've developed a tool, or actually finished a tool, that's not going to be bundled with the product. It's the first in a series of enterprise products, and it's a Dyalog file server system. It's a share file system, basically. It's in production at the first customer site, and it's running, I think, today in production. But before it's a real product that we can just ship to you, there's some maturing that needs to be done, some documentation that has to be written. And but we do plan to have it generally available in 2013. What DFS does is that it gets rid of the problem with using files on a network, on a LAN. I mean, the network operating systems are getting more and more lax in terms of actually guaranteeing you that what you require from the network in terms of putting something on the server or getting something is actually happening, because they what is it called? They assume that you are using some kind of database management system on the server side. I mean, Dyalog rubbish APL file systems are sometimes not that, and with this product you can actually make sure that you get across the network in a secure and manageable fashion. It's very fast compared to using the file operations across the network. You can get statistics on file usage from your user community, and you can do online backups. So you can actually back up the system and recover while the system is running. If you're interested in this kind of environment, don't miss Morten's talk on the DFS. And please come and talk to us, because we haven't priced the product yet. And obviously, if more people are interested in it, the price is getting smaller. If there's only 2 people interested, it's going to be costly, because it's real system work, and it's actually a lot of work to get these things to work in a production environment. But the more people who want to contribute towards it, the cheaper it gets. And the easier it is to continue the improvement and enhancements. The last thing we've been really seriously focusing on this year is our constant effort of recruiting new users to APL. You've seen the contest, and last night we looked at the Try APL initiative. The other thing we did in connection with Try APL is that we allow people now to download an unregistered version of Dyalog APL. In the past, we have free educational versions, and we have the non-commercial version for £50. But we did require people to give us an email address and actually a university where they worked. We've seen that, at least for some students, they refuse to give their name. And quite a few of them, as soon as they get to that barrier, they just abandon the attempt. So we've tried now with an unregistered version. It means that we have no control of who and where it goes. It's scary, but we've had 700 downloads so far of the unregistered version. So we hope that it's actually going to spread in a viral fashion. And actually, as you heard last night, it actually did at one point and brought the system down, because one of the very red blogs in the IT world had a favorable comment about the Try APL site. So we had 8,000 visits in one day. That brought the log files down, not the server. But I mean, things like that can happen, and maybe we'll see a growing interest. At least in academia, we see interest in APL. Functional programming, parallel execution, I mean, all these styles of programming meet in APL, and APL is a very good tool for that. One of them is the University at Rome, where 2 guys, long-term APLers, both Anibaldi and Sacco, they've started a course in financial mathematics for master students based on Dyalog APL. I mean, these guys are looking for sponsors for their students. They're doing master's dissertations and using this tool or this language. And so if you want to sponsor one of the students, want them to do a business case on your side, please let us know and we can make the connection to Rome. We're also sponsoring a PhD student at the University of Indiana. He's using APL as an notation to describe parallel processing. He's been to visit us in Bramley, and actually some of the knowledge he brought to town gave us quite some inspiration to work with in our future work. So I think we'll continue to have these cooperations, because they're actually valuable to us and hopefully also to the counterpart. And today we're happy to have 2 representatives or delegates from the Copenhagen University, the Department of Computer Science, and they're working on finding ways of compiling array notations for parallel execution in the fastest possible way. And they've invited us from Dyalog to work with them, because quite a few of the requesters of these projects from the financial world are using Dyalog. So it's an interesting environment to improve. And then we do expect a lot from the Raspberry Pi initiative. It's a very cheap computer. It's actually basically a board, single board, that you buy for $25. And you can also buy a case to put around the board. It's so cheap that you can actually buy quite a few of them, and the intention is that every student should be able to buy one for themselves without bankrupting themselves. But I think that people are actually using them as servers that is not sort of a high throughput server. It can just sit there on the rack and do stuff for you. It's not a very high-spec computer, but it's very adequate. Yeah? Ah, righty. Oh, this is it. $25 worth of computing. So what we've just done, oh, and there's a nice little raspberry on it. Beautiful. You can have a look here. What's purple? The raspberry is not purple. Come on. And with the raspberry, we actually just initiated working with some people who are, through a startup company, providing content and training for the Raspberry Pi. And Liam will show you how we worked with the Raspberry Pi, but there's an APL on it. And so we hope to proliferate APL with the Raspberry. But obviously, it doesn't help having APL on it if you don't tell people about it and teach them how to use it. So we're going to do a lot of that in the year to come. And finally, I'd just like to mention the work that John Estep, Ray Polivka, and Jerry Brennan is doing, is bringing APL to high school kids and even younger kids. At Dyalog, we consider that to be very important. And you wouldn't believe the letters I get from the students of John Estep. They're so appreciative of how that helped them do their work at school. Jerry is here this year, as I mentioned, and he's looking for help to create more tools to teach kids APL and teach kids to think. So if you can provide him with some assistance, I mean, come to his talk on Wednesday and talk and offer your help. If you have something you can contribute. Okay, so after 6 years of gold, strength, wisdom, and immortality, you should be bursting now with energy. We'll now hope for a good period of favorable constant wind. And just a small warning, this year is the first year of 50-year celebrations for APL. In 1962, Kenneth E. Iverson published the programming language, another son of a Viking, by the way, Norwegian ancestors that sailed to America and started to bring knowledge that way. And Roger has made a huge effort of collecting various sources on APL, and they can be found on the J Software website. Did you bring any of the book, for instance, to this conference? No, okay. So, but I think, we'll have plenty of time to celebrate, because the last of the 50-year celebrations, I think, is in 2016, which is the anniversary of the first clean space saved. And I think the Germans are actually planning something in 2016. At least they got a bread in Berlin. So, enjoy the conference, and welcome to you all. Oh, one thing I had to say. Helene says, those of you who have to pay for something, can you please come around to the desk after lunch? Because then they'll be set up to accept credit cards. That's all. Welcome, and I'll hand you over to Morten.